We got stressed cause we're striving, surviving, keep on moving to improving, rearranging. The whole world's changing, pandemic, systemic, rule making, rule breaking, disagreeing, no, we're fighting or fleeing.
Welcome to Minding the Gap, Behavioral Sciences of Alabama podcast. I'm Paul Bakke, licensed counselor, and I'm alongside Dr. David Barnhart. And we're going to talk a little bit about OCD and accommodations with family members and loved ones. Good morning, Dr. Barnhart.
Good morning.
Ready to talk about some OCD?
I'm ready to accommodate you.
All right, excellent. Okay, so the first part of this would be just if you haven't seen any of these videos before, not familiar with OCD, would be to just get into what OCD is, what happens in that process, and you know what someone is going through that's dealing with OCD.
Yeah, so OCD fundamentally is the tendency to obsess about some area that feels like a threat. So it's kind of at the core of OCD. Generally, we tend to think of it as a person has a certain set of values. You know, we all have some set of values. A tendency to have anxiety sensitivity, and then to have a perception that something is threatening an important value in our life. So, for example, if I value my relationships, which we tend to do, but if you have OCD and you value relationships, if you feel like there's a threat, like you might harm one of your loved ones by not being careful enough. And so you check things like, did I turn the oven off? Did I turn the stove off? Did I get the doors locked?
Did I say something to hurt their feelings?
Oh, that's a big one. Yes. Did I say something to hurt their feelings?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. And that can manifest itself in other ways, like worrying about when they leave, are they going to be okay?
Mm-hmm.
For children, or my mom going to be and dad going to be okay? Am I going to be okay without them? I've got to have them here all the time. If they're not here, I'm uncomfortable, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is this valued relationship that OCD basically just penetrates and manipulates and drives a person to do something to relieve this anxiety by checking,
Mm-hmm.
by texting, by staying at home and not going and spending the night at friend's house because I can't be away from my parents, those kinds of things. So there's a you know, typically it's a kind of a regular worry that we have grown, you know, as we live life, and it's just been exacerbated to a level of I've got to stay safe all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So part of the relief of the anxiety would be to for the person that has suffering from OCD would be to seek reassurance in ways such as texting.
Mm-hmm.
I got to hear back from you, or else I'm, you know, everything's not okay. I got to hear back from you. Oh, I'm okay. Don't worry. Am I okay? Sometimes we talk about it in our meetings when we meet with children early, and they don't really know us too well, or they're uncomfortable with talking about the issue. We ask them a question, and they go. They look at their parents, you know, and they want their parents to answer the question because they want reassurance by looking over there. I don't know what to say, you know, so they get reassurance that way. So there's all kinds of different ways that.
Well, they do it in a subtle way sometimes. So even in treatment, when we talk about this and we talk about the importance of avoiding this, just seems so counterintuitive, avoiding reassurance. and they really work to try to not directly ask for reassurance. They'll do things like try to read facial expressions,
Mhm.
listen to tone of voice. In a work setting, uh, they do a lot of that. So a person with OCD is looking to see, did I hurt somebody's feelings, or did I do something that
Did I do a good job?
did I touch somebody inappropriately?
Right.
I
And
mean,
so asking questions like that sometimes is what happens is,
Mhm,
hey, was it okay that I did that? You know,
mhm,
and
mhm,
I had this thought, and a lot of times in a married situation, you have someone that's has a worry and a disturbing intrusive thought, OCD, and they confess,
mhm,
and the spouse is going, I don't want to hear this, you know,
mhm,
what, you know, and then they worry that, oh my gosh, you've had that thought. What does that mean?
mhm.
Then maybe they don't realize they have OCD, or even if they do, there's this constant back and forth of reassuring, no, it's okay. It's okay. You didn't do anything. Yeah, it's okay. And so the first part of the process for someone that's loving someone with OCD, which is a book that we recommend, but in terms of loving someone with OCD, is being aware that the person with OCD is going to try to seek reassurance because they do detect a threat that feels very real to them. The thought is made up that the feeling is not.
Mhm.
And so they're going to seek reassurance. And so for the person that is loving someone with OCD, it's identifying how they may provide an accommodation or reassurance without really knowing and being aware of that, and then being able to have a conversation about that. You know, when you keep asking me these questions, it's not that those questions are bothersome to me and you're annoying me. It's me answering it is not helping you. It's just providing fuel to the fire. And I've got to stop. I've got to stop answering that question. And so I'm going to start saying, well, what do you think about that? Or I'm
Mhm,
going to start
mhm.
saying, I can't answer that because that would be providing reassurance. And I'm not supposed to do that. The counselor says it. It's not me. I still love you, but it's the counselor
Mhm.
told me not to do it.
Right.
Okay. So, so a
But
big part of that is,
let's talk about why we're not doing that.
yeah. Okay. So we're not doing it because the whole idea of exposure is for the person to be able to feel that feeling
Mhm,
and let that feeling go down by itself,
mhm.
and which it eventually will.
It will eventually. Your brain state will change.
Brain state will change if
And,
reassurance is happening. The brain state gets comfort for momentarily and then comes right back up.
and
So, and that can happen all day long.
the issue is called negative reinforcement,
Right. Right.
which,
Doing something to avoid something bad.
right, preventing or
Not
reducing
punishment.
discomfort
Right.
by checking,
Right.
seeking reassurance. That's how OCD obsessions and compulsions are maintained.
Right.
And so we're trying to separate the reinforcing value, which is actually a chemistry. You know, so if I ask you for reassurance and you give it to me, my discomfort drops some, maybe a lot, but it drops some. And when that happens, there's a little dopamine shot, a little neurotransmitter that strengthens the behavior
It's
of
reinforcing.
seeking reassurance. Yes,
Yeah,
that's
it's reinforcing that behavior that's avoiding the negative feeling.
it's not that we're cruel people
Right.
and don't want to give reassurance.
Yeah. And that's what's difficult for us as counselors, because we want to help people. Most of us didn't sign up to make people suffer more.
That's true.
I'm
Yeah.
just assuming that.
Yeah.
And so having to ask someone to sit there with their discomfort is difficult for us as professionals.
Mhm.
It's a little easier for us as we do it because we realize, okay, we see that it works, we
Yeah.
know that this is the outcome. But for someone with a child who's struggling with this fear, or a spouse, or, loved one of some sort, you have someone that's really struggling, it's really difficult not to say, it's okay, it's all right, it's okay. It's really difficult because that person is really suffering in the moment.
Yes.
And so,
And a parent, if it's a parent or loved one, they're uncomfortable too. They're suffering. So not only does the OCD sufferer get reinforcement for seeking reassurance or checking, but the person giving the reassurance has the same benefit in
right,
terms of learning.
I feel better because
Yeah.
I was feeling bad about my loved one suffering, and so I gave reassurance. That made me feel better for the moment.
It's a trap. It's a real
and then
trap.
they asked again, and eventually, what we see is that the person providing reassurance gets tired of it. That at some point they go, I've already told you, I told you it's okay, right? And they get frustrated. And then it's about the frustration about it. And so that's why it's really important to identify it and to be able to say on the front end, okay, this is what this looks like. And for the person that's helping, supporting the sufferer of OCD, I'm going to really work on letting my anxiety go up and resist providing it and habituate. And we use that word, get used to that feeling and think about, okay, this is the benefit of it, and being able to talk about it on the front end that, I'm not ignoring you. I'm not, mad at you. I'm just not going to give in to the OCD there. And the person that has the OCD to be able to go, okay, I understand on the front end. That doesn't mean in the moment that they're happy about it.
Oh, right. Absolutely.
But it needs to happen for exposure to work.
Yes. Yeah. So, and it's so counterintuitive. It just really goes against what we think is going
supposed
to be
support our loved ones.
beneficial.
Supposed to go put our arm around them and tell them it's okay. Especially our children. We don't want to see our kids suffering, and we know that they really are.
But it actually, in the long run, it makes it worse. Because OCD just begins to take over.
And that's the thing to remember, that it's going to be difficult, but it's going to make it better if I do my part, and I don't want to make it worse. And so, and that's worse than that temporary discomfort that the person's feeling, that dragging it on and making it worse and harder is the worst outcome. So we have to really practice it and think about it beforehand, and tolerate a lot of discomfort, for the OCD sufferer and for the loved one, because it is uncomfortable all the way around.
Yes. And when we do therapy with people, it's very systematically done. This is organized. Parents get a strategy.
That's right.
So everybody understands, what's going on.
Right. And so, and in some cases, and maybe many cases, as we talk about a hierarchy or a ladder that we develop, that's okay. This is what we're going to start with, the exposure, and it's a little easier than starting with the hardest thing. So there, it's practice. So it may be time. It may be, it may be 5 minutes. If you wait 5 minutes, you can ask in 5 minutes, and I'll tell you. So there's accommodation,
right?
But it's not immediate,
right?
And then you're stretching it out to 10 minutes and longer.
And the delay.
It's right. And so we, sometimes we use the example of when a kid is having a hard time going to sleep by themselves, and mom and dad are providing reassurance by, okay, and then they're going, 6 months later, they're going, he's got to sleep in his own bed, and so, okay, let's start with stay in your bed for 5 minutes because one is difficult. Remember that, or whatever the time is. And they stay in bed for 5 minutes. When I come in and get you, you come in. You come in 5 minutes. All right, 5 minutes. Now we're moving up the ladder, and 15, 20 minutes is you're there, and the parent goes back in and the kid's asleep because the kid is habituated to this feeling, starting with 5 minutes. So they got some accommodation in the beginning after 5 minutes. So that's a big part of it too. It's not just, all right, no more reassurance, it's over, no more accommodations. There's a systematic plan that allows for it, but it's building this tolerance of the feeling. 5 minutes first, or the small feeling, that's related to this first. We're not going to do the big one yet, and we're working up to the big one.
Yeah.
So that's something that's comforting for loved ones to think about, is that we're not going to start with the hardest thing. We're going to start, and the OCD sufferer, that we're going to start with things that are maybe a little bit easier according to you. According to you, you're the one that's developing this ladder and hierarchy.
Yeah. So the loved one has a hierarchy, and the family has a hierarchy, and we're working up this ladder, together. Setting time frames to stop accommodating, decreasing the number of
numbers,
accommodations or reassurances in a day or over a time frame. There are many, many ways to help people shape their behavior and begin to spread apart the intrusive thought, the need to check or to seek reassurance, and the reinforcing value. If we can wait for a long enough period of time, then we don't get that reinforcement. It's a chemistry that doesn't take place. So then we can occupy our time with things that really matter, like having a good time with our friends or family.
Yeah. And one of the things that we talk about quite a bit is when we're doing an exposure, we don't want the client or anybody doing any cognitive restructuring work where we're going, oh, this is not really a threat. This is really not a big deal, because they're leaning into this feeling and going, oh, yes, it is a threat. I've got to tolerate the feeling that's connected to that. And it is. And so, and a lot of times, it's very easy to get confused and go, well, I'm doing exposure and I'm really telling the story. And in my mind, I'm going, well, this is just a made up story. It's not even true, and this is never going to happen, and so as a client is working on this, we try to work with them on, no, this is really just tolerate that feeling, don't do anything to make it go down, even telling yourself the truth.
Yes.
So it's the same thing with the loved ones. It's while you're doing exposure, that becomes reassurance. And I've had people doing exposure sessions, and the parent is there, and they're doing the exposure, and and the parent is going, yeah, see, you did this last week. It was no big deal last week. You already got it on your arm. It's not no big deal to put it on your leg. And so that's true. That's true. Yes. The thinking is, this is not a big deal that you're doing this exposure, but that's not the time to do that. That's reassurance. What? Yeah. Think of it as this, think of it as this. It's just like, no, right? So the parent is really trying, and they're, no, don't say that. Let them feel it. So it can get confusing.
It can be. And we do want people to be able to use cognitive tools, but in the beginning, the much more progress takes place by reducing reassurance and accommodations and doing exposure work. So
Right.
really facing the thing that you fear, even
Facing-
making it worse.
Making it worse. That's right. We want to make it worse. I mean, that's the whole thing, is you make it as bad as possible, because if you can deal with it at the highest level, then when it comes up later, as that becomes paired with trigger and low anxiety, then it's easier for them to go, yeah, I was able to do that last week. It's no big deal. That we want them to get to the point where that helps them move on. But in the beginning, that doesn't. It's like, oh yeah, it's just that becomes a temporary relief. That the exposure is the most important part, and that's it's very tricky.
Yes.
It's very tricky because you have to really look and think about what you're saying and doing to separate exposure from accommodation, and it can be subtle.
Yes. We did write a book on this.
Yes, we did. Right. Yeah. Writing and Living Away Your Fears is in publication. It's been published, and it's available on Amazon.com for, was it a quarter or something like that? It's $9.95.
Yeah, it's $5 for the
$5.
Kindle version and
Okay.
and $10 for the paperback.
Yeah. So it's,
yeah. Yeah, it came out last September. And
it's a bargain.
Yeah, 2020. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've got all that in there, and it's
Right.
all in there, and so it's a valuable resource. And those books like that are good to have as a resource. You know,
Right.
you sometimes you read it cover to cover, and sometimes you read it and you go, oh, let me focus on this section.
Mhm.
Let me remember. Oh, I forgot. You know, let me go back, and having something to help guide people
Mhm.
that are suffering, and for people who are loved ones, to help understand with it.
So they're good tools in there.
Tools.
And this is, one of the things that we deal with is accommodations, family accommodations, and the importance of reducing those accommodations.
Yeah, and working with a therapist while doing this is really important, because we talk about conditioning a lot. We talk about how, we're conditioned based on what we do on an everyday basis, and the more conditioned we become, the less likely we're able to see that what we're doing is not helping. And so it's important to have a relationship with a therapist that they can talk about what the book says. Well, this is what I took from this, and yeah, well, that you got it, or that part. But did you think maybe you're missing this part? Oh, okay, I didn't realize that. Or this is accommodation. I didn't know that. I had no idea, because I'm just so used to doing that. It just seems so normal to do that. And in
Yes.
OCD treatment, we're getting very abnormal. That's one thing to think about, is we're getting very abnormal. We go further away from normal.
It creeps in and takes over.
And the treatment is not normal. It's who normally goes and touches a toilet seat that has at a public place? I don't do that.
Mhm.
Do you do that, Dr. Barnhart, on a regular basis?
Only when I'm showing somebody how to do exposure work.
Yes, right. The only
Because
time I do that is in an abnormal situation.
Yeah, you're not going to catch anything from a toilet seat.
Yeah, but people don't just do that. Just
Right.
Normally they don't touch that, right?
No, it seems
Right?
it seems
'Cause
disgusting to them.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but in OCD treatment, that's one of the things that you do, is you touch this thing that you just feel is the dirtiest thing, and makes you most susceptible to be contaminated.
Yes.
And
Or
if you can do that, if you can get
Yes.
to the point where you can do that abnormal thing,
Right.
then you can use the restroom. You can, you know,
Yes, you're
you can
functional.
stop the washing the hands so much, you know, you can function, you know, and
Yes, yeah.
and you can do what is, and then we hear that a lot. Oh my gosh, you know, you're going to have them do that, you know,
Mhm.
what? I wouldn't do that normally. Well, this is
Not normally,
it's
not normally.
normal.
But,
Yes.
you know, so we can lock the doors and leave the house without having to return to check
Right.
to see if we
Right.
lock the door.
That's right.
Yes,
And
all kinds of
to deal
things.
with that uncomfortable feeling. And,
Yeah.
and the thing is, once the client has become okay with leaving doors unlocked and not
Mhm.
checking all the time, and okay, once it's not an obsession and a compulsion, you lock the door,
Mhm.
you know, you lock it and then you go to bed.
That's right.
You lock it and you go
And go to sleep.
and go to sleep, right?
Yes, yeah.
And so that's the key. A lot of times that's the key to when is it okay to do things. It's when it's not when it's not I have to.
Mhm.
You know, when you get to the point where you don't feel like you have to, then do what you would do in normal living.
Yes.
So it's very difficult. It's very emotional for everybody involved. And that's why being aware of it and really having some reading materials and some help to be able to decide together what's going to help and what accommodations do we need to get rid of.
What's that book?
That book is Writing and Living Your Fears Away.
That's it.
And if you Google that, you'll find it.
Yes, you will.
If you look on Amazon, you will find it.
Absolutely.
All right, we got it covered.
I think so.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching. Please rate, subscribe, review, give us 5 stars and all that kind of stuff, and help us out and
Yeah.
let us know what, you know, we will comments. Give us comments. Let us know what you want podcasts to be about, and we appreciate your tuning in. Hopefully it helps out.
Yes.
Got a mind,
And the stress divides me.
the stress divides
Won't
me.
mind the gap, hey.
Won't mind the gap,
So
hey.
why don't you help me?